This is Derek Logue from oncefallen.com, and this is the Rally and Tally video from Tallahassee from April 22nd, 2015. Now, I want you to take the time to explain why we chose this particular venue, and I'll also be going over some of the key events that happened during the day. The reason why we chose Tallahassee, Florida was because of this big high-profile event, or at least what we thought to be a high-profile event, featuring Lauren Book, who is the daughter of Ron Book, who is the guy responsible for the Julia Total Causeway camp. But also, it wasn't just about them, it was also about Florida's scorched earth policies. And we wanted to have a public event, a public demonstration at a very high profile event in hopes of garnering some media attention to our cause. And we thought that the Lawrence Kids event would be such a place that gathered a lot of media attention and everything. So anyways, we came out and we set up our shop about 11 o'clock a.m. Now, we told individuals that were coming to the event that we weren't going to be out there till about 3:30 or so, because that's when the Lawrence Kids event was supposed to occur. Well, um, we made a decision to start a little earlier because um, we wanted to see if there was going to be any potential problems. I believe that there were some concerns that we could possibly be told to move or leave. And we came out there a little bit earlier. As you can see, here we are with our signs. We had some big 3x5 signs. I set up a display, which you'll see here momentarily. But we parked across from the Capitol building. We talked with a Capitol officer. You probably saw that in the picture earlier with me and Tony Jones. And you can see Tony Jones was dressed as a Jewish Holocaust prisoner, wearing an anonymous mask and everything. So obviously he was certainly an eye catcher with the outfit. Of course, those big signs we had were pretty eye-catching. I mean, obviously we made them big so that way people could see them as they were going by. Now, we got a lot of positive attention for them. We certainly had thumbs ups from people. You can see, here's somebody who read the sign, gives Tom a thumbs up here. Um, we had people honking their horns at us in approval, of course, and people were waving. People were taking pictures. Obviously, they haven't seen anything like this before, and I would say, the overall response was positive. I really didn't have too many people shouting bad things at me. Yeah, you can hear me there responding to one of the you can hear me responding to one of the passersby there. So anyways, here's my Julia Total Causeway display, and it certainly got a lot of attention from people that were driving by, that were taking pictures. Obviously, here's the commode chair that I think some people were worried about me putting this display up, but I think hopefully now that you see the display up, that hopefully realize that it was a good thing that I put it out there. It certainly drew a lot of attention to passersby. This was a very, very busy intersection. Alapache is a huge divided highway, 4 lanes coming, ending there at Monroe. So there was a lot of people going by throughout the day, hundreds and hundreds of cars and and everything. So here we are. More people arrive. Now it's later in the afternoon, and at closer to the appointed time, which is about 3:30. So War shows up about 3, and they get on the side of the street where the Capitol building is, and they were immediately met by the Capitol Police, and they went back and forth with this. As you see, 5 people came over there to, 5 police officers came over to speak to them, and I don't know what was said to them. There was some discussion back and forth. Now, what you have to understand, there was no sidewalk on that side of the street. Um, because the sidewalk itself is part of this, is fenced off, and it's quite a distance. It wasn't like where we were at there on Alapache, where the sidewalk is right beside the road. So that where they were standing, there was no sidewalk. The sidewalk was about 20 feet from the road, and they had this fence up. So Vicky and War were going to, pass this olive branch on to Lauren Book, sort of a sign of, of peace and whatnot. I mean, after all, Lauren Book said that, she welcomed her critics to meet her face to face, and that's what obviously was part of the game plan. Um, at the Capitol Police, they went back and forth with War on this. They came, they spoke, they left. Um, Vicky and some of the other protesters that joined her on that side of the street, they held up their signs and banners for a while too. And then you'll see here in a few minutes, the Capitol Police, they come back, they speak to them again. I think the people that that were hosting the Lauren Book event were complaining that they were there and didn't want them there, and kept trying to get the police to chase them off. And eventually, War members and the other people that were at the event migrated. You can see this one guy taking pictures. We actually had two different documentary film crews out there taking pictures of us and filming the event, so possibly you'll see what was said to them at a later time. I don't know when this documentary is going to come out. Obviously, these things take time, so it may be about a year or two before you see anything on it. But the film crew, they're right there while the police are speaking to them. Um, so they pretty much got all the footage of what was said. Apparently, what was told to me was that the Book family had complained about us. They actually complained about us on their website, and I'll point that out again later on. But anyways, they weren't going to stop us from being out there. Now, aside from the Capitol Police going and speaking to us, we didn't have any problems with law enforcement. As a matter of fact, I was on that corner for hours, and it wasn't even until about the time that Lauren and her entourage came down the street that I even saw a police officer pass by. So we pretty much had this busy intersection to ourselves, but we did want to film the police in case there was any potential problems and and everything. It turned out to be a pretty peaceful event. Again, I don't know what was said to them, but um, but they were allowed to stand there at least for a time. But as it got closer to the event, they apparently had to leave the Capitol grounds. They packed up and came across the street. So we probably had I would say at this point, we had about a dozen people out there. A couple of, I would say maybe really about 16 people if you count the film crew, which was, one person was doing a one-man thing, and then you had one person who had more professional equipment with the cameraman and whatnot. But there were a dozen protesters out there, and including a child, which you'll see later on, holding protest signs. And these were, for the most part, our signs were huge, so obviously passersby could see them. Now, Lauren's kids had lied about why we were there. They said that we opposed education efforts, which was total crock. But what that meant is they said that they were going to have the full cooperation of law enforcement. So what I want you to do is look at what happened last year, look at the way it looked last year, and compare it to this year. The first thing you'll notice between the difference between last year and this year is that here's this huge line of law enforcement in front of them, and Tom is there standing on the median. Like I said, you could see plainly this is a divided highway. This is the end of that block that we were standing on, and here comes a member of law enforcement, parks right in front of Tom, and you can see the line of law enforcement, and in the foreground here, you can switch now that we're switching to the camera angle to my camera here, you could see these people. What they're doing is they're putting down these colored smoke bombs that are going. They're these blue and purple smoke bombs that went off just before Lauren and Ron got here, and you could smell the money coming from this thing. Um, here's two vehicles with Lauren's kids logos on them that Lauren uses when she's going around parading her new children's book. And then behind them, and they'll roll up here in a moment, is about 8 uniformed FDLE squad motorcycles, I should say, followed by a Leon County Sheriff's Office squad car, and behind them, to help form this human line between them and us, is a is a group of bikers against child abuse, or BACA for short. They had also helped to form this human wall between them and us. So we were told to stay on the sidewalk, don't get on the street. We were told to sort of keep a safe distance away from them. And of course, you could see here, plain as day, that there's that uniformed officer sitting right in front of Tom. So they had us completely blocked off. Still, we're holding up our signs and everything, so people can see us as they go by. You can see me standing next to my Julie Total Causeway display, but there's more people further down the street. We're lined up completely along this block. With Tom still standing on the median, so they didn't shoo him off the median, but they did sort of have them somewhat blocked off. But of course, that's the good thing about having these gigantic signs, is that they make it really hard to block us off. Now, here you can see them setting off the smoke grenades, and Ron and Lauren, they run for their lives. They run as fast as they can from us so they can try to ignore us. And of course, the police follow right next to them, so that way we can't get in their way at all. And you can see this woman. That woman taking pictures is not one of us. She's actually from the Bikers Against Child Abuse folks. She didn't really say anything to us, and we didn't really say anything to her. She just took her pictures quietly and left us alone, and we left her alone. And you can see all the walkers going by. They were hooting and hollering a little bit, and but we still held up our signs and everything. So lots of people did see them. Obviously, um, we weren't ignored. At this point, you could definitely say we were censored. At this point, the smoke bombs were not something that they sent off that they did last year. This is obviously a new thing, and they did it specifically for us. Although in the future, I don't know, I don't think they'll be doing it, because it made a lot of people cough and choke, and they weren't very pleasant smelling, and downright toxic probably. And I would say there was probably 300 people at this event, and I would say the vast majority of them were college kids, probably made to attend because of the because of the Jemias Winston ordeal there at Florida State University. Here, Star somebody, so it's been in headlines an awful lot. And so Lauren Book had held a Take Back the Night event the night before, so I'm pretty sure that's where a lot of these folks came from. Obviously, they had more people than the year before, possibly in anticipation of us not knowing how many people we were going to have. So even if we ended up having, 50 or more people, we would have still have had a wall formed between us and them, but perhaps we could have spread out a little bit more, and they wouldn't have been able to hide from us the way they did during this event. Now, here's this big, ugly, gaudy tour bus of Lauren's, this ugly powder puff blue bus, and there's this one guy right there. You can kind of see him in this shot here. He's shooting video of us with his cell phone, but he's also making obscene gestures at us. He points and he laughs at us. He kind of gives me the old one finger salute, and that's when you see me sort of yelling back at him. I have my fist raised in the air, and then I point at him for a moment, and then I point back at the sign here, and and say, my message, you know, he wasn't going to deter us from our message. So they crossed the street here, and you can see a lot of law enforcement here, and at this point, I'm going to be silent because I really want you to hear what Ron Book has to say. And what he said to me, what he said at the beginning of this speech is very, very appalling.
There are a lot of people, there are a lot of people to thank, but the children up front who broke their piggy banks open and raised money in Bay County and Panama City and started a bus to be with us and worked hard on Saturday in the rain. This is for you.
Now, to me, the idea of children given money out of their piggy bank to a couple of millionaires is probably the most absurd thing that I heard during this 20-minute speech. The governor of Florida, Rick Scott, he gave his quick speech. I think the lieutenant governor gave a couple of sentences. Also, the Florida attorney general was there. And then Ron and Lauren Book both gave a speech. And to me, you could smell the money at the event. It was pretty obvious. I mean, the big tour bus, the billboards, the balloons, the T-shirts, all this powder blue and powder puff pink stuff was everywhere. And obviously, corporations like GEO Group, the private prison industry, gave to this charity to make this event possible. I will say this much, though. I was amazed at the lack of press that was there. It wasn't really covered as much by the press as I thought it would be. Now, there was some press before the event. Beforehand, we got a little bit of publicity before the event. I dare say we got pretty much as much press as Lauren's kids did the entire time because we was right on their tail the week before. War got an article in the New Times. I managed to get a letter to the editor there in the Tallahassee Democrat, and then we were covered heavily by FloridaPolitics.com, which they pretty much told us, begged us not to attend this event, to try to silence us. But they ultimately, funny thing is, they ultimately interviewed me for their for their website. And then also we were on WCTV, the CBS station there in Tallahassee.
A 1,500-mile walk has ended, but the fight to raise awareness for child abuse goes on.
Children's advocate Lauren Book wrapped up her Walk a Mile in My Shoes journey today, and she was joined by state leaders on the last leg of that walk. As Eyewitness News reporter Kevin Clark explains, her walk could lead to stronger laws against child abuse.
While legislators say Florida's current laws on child abuse make it the safest in the country, protesters argue offenders are ostracized by society long after they serve time.
If a person has paid their debt to society, why do we make it impossible for registered citizens to complete their lives without the persecution from the state?
I want you, as a final thought, to consider what Lauren Book said in an interview with the New Times in February of 2015. She said she would welcome her critics to meet her face to face so she can talk to them about the wonderful things she's doing to help children. Well, what about this child that her laws help to make homeless? She chose not to address this issue. She chose to run from the anti-registry movement and the rally and tally, and chose to censor us with a puff of smoke and a wall of law enforcement agents. What about this child, Lauren? Does this child not matter to you? Apparently not. Instead, you're too busy taking $25,000 from the GEO Group, a group that abuses children in their facilities. Now, this is the reason why the anti-registry movement felt it was so important to protest Lauren's kids' event. And this has been a video by Derek Logue of oncefallen.com on behalf of the Anti-Registry Movement, the Rally and Tally 2015.